All right, ladies and gentlemen, good night, good night, good night. It's 9:07 p.m. and where I live in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm going to talk to you guys about, as you can see, the topic villains and our empathy for them clouding our judgment of them. We're going to go into that. It was his interesting discussion I was having with a guy. We were talking about Infinity War and Thanos. And that leads to this discussion that we'll have, but it will cover something else that I think a lot of people, again, people watching a movie, sometimes they get the wrong idea about the character that they're watching. So I'm going to discuss some of the villains that you might find yourself empathizing with in the DCEU, and then some of the villains in the MCU, and how these villains are villainous. At least only one villain in the MCU. I thought this was a worthwhile discussion because, I said I think it was a worthwhile discussion is because out of this discussion, remember, I don't just do things in a vacuum. I'm not discussing movies in a vacuum. It's to help us to have a better interaction with our communities, the communities we would like to see happen, and our aspirations for a community. So it's very important to understand and have a sense of morality, a sense of ethics, right and wrong. So we'll get into this discussion. It's going to be very interesting. Trust me, it's going to be very interesting. But before I do, it's always important to start off with a piece of scripture. That's just the way I am. That's just the way I do things. Well, look at Psalms 115. Verse 9 says, "O Israel, trust in the Lord. He is your help and your shield. O Aaron, trust in the Lord. He is your help. He is your shield. You that fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is your help. He is your shield." It was a gentleman who I was talking to, the same guy I was talking about Infinity War with. And, he brought up some very interesting topics as we were discussing. Things that I think are things I can share on the internet, right? The guy's name is Kieran Hercules. He's a really cool dude. I really like talking to him. And in talking with him, he actually opened my mind to certain ideas and certain concepts and certain things, which I think are pivotal to communities, and also pivotal, I think, to the young people who will be watching these movies, especially the children. So I want to speak on a couple of these things. And of course, you can leave your comments in the comment section, which should be on the side there. Not the comment section, the chat section. And if you would like to join me in this live discussion at this point in time, of course, it's a spontaneous stream. If you want to join me in the live discussion here, you can always do so. Just ask me for the link, and I may put it in the chat section. I may not put it in the chat section because there are two reasons why. One is when I put things in the chat section, people who maybe trolls or just people who are crazy wackos can get a copy of that link to the Hangout, and then I have to change the Hangout because these guys can just barge into my Hangout any old time. So I prefer to, if I'm going to put the link in the chat section, it's going to be very brief, okay? All right, now for those of you who are actually viewing this live stream right now, those of you who are here, you can start talking up in the chat section, and we will be discussing different topics, so you can start talking in the chat section. I know that someone is actually watching this right now. I can see that there are a couple of people who are viewing this. They're not making comments in the chat section, but I can see there are some people viewing this particular stream right now, and that is awesome. All right, so let's get into what we want to talk about. But first, the scripture that I just read, particularly what was repeated over and over again, was God is your help. He is your shield. Now, like I was telling you, this guy, man, he made a very interesting point about what a shield does. And a shield is generally carried on the left side of a person. So this is my left hand right here. And the shield protects your heart. The shield protects the vital organs of your heart and your chest. That's what a shield does. It actually protects your chest region. And so it's interesting that, you know, this is repeated over and over. He's our help and our shield. He's our protector, basically. And I find that very interesting because he refers to three people. First, he refers to Israel, the overcomer. Then he refers to Aaron. Aaron happened to be the first priest, the first high priest of God. And we are, you know, for those who are Christians, they know we are a kingdom of priests. And then he refers to you that fear the Lord. All right. And not talking about fear as being afraid, but you who respect the Lord and want to follow in his ways and adopt his character. So I found it very interesting that God is your help and your shield, particularly help. When we talk about a help, you know, woman was a helpmeet to man. A helpmeet is what is referred to as the Holy Spirit. He's our help. So it's just very interesting how he says God is our help. And in that case, respect, we're talking about the Holy Spirit and our shield or protector. So I found that very interesting. And that's what I actually went through today with those words, even though I couldn't remember the specific words. And what I'm trying to say to you guys is that if you start to abide in the ways of the Lord, that is doing good things, then automatically you're in a safe place. Automatically you're in a safe place. That's what that basically is saying. So again, always look to aspire higher, not just for yourself, but for those around you. And always seek to do the good things that are good. Of course, good, I'm talking about it in the terms of helping mankind, benefiting mankind, bettering mankind, not taking life, not destroying mankind. Okay. So if you want to know it's a good thing, then you will see mankind, you know, become better. They're not being destroyed by the things that you present. That's how you know it's good, right? So that's the key. You know, good things are not just based on perception. Some people say this is good, but it's really bad. You know what I mean? And they perceive it to be good. It's not based on perception. It's based on what actually, when it's done, is mankind benefiting from it? Is it making mankind better? All right. Okay. So let's get into villains and our empathy for them. And I really, this is going to be a very interesting discussion. So let's get into it. So me and this gentleman, we're discussing Thanos. And he was saying that because the Soul Stone demanded that the person love the person that they're going to sacrifice, he said that Thanos loved Gamora. And I argued that he did not love Gamora. If he loved Gamora, he wouldn't sacrifice her. His actions betrayed that he didn't love her. And he was like, but then the Soul Stone wouldn't have given him, it wouldn't give itself up to him with his powers if that was the case. And I thought about it, and then I came to the conclusion that, first of all, the Soul Stone needs a soul to acquire it. Therefore, it's not a good thing. Think about it. It's really a token of evil. If it needs a soul so that the bearer can have it, then it's something that's evil, if you think about it. So the Soul Stone itself doesn't know what love is, if you think about it. It's either that or the directors just had a screwed up idea of what love is. And love is always shown by action. And if you have to kill, you know, if you are killing someone, you kill someone because you love them, then you don't love them. You don't love them. You know, in my country, we've had a number of manslaughter crimes, domestic violence, where men have killed women because they claim they love them. A woman never asked to be killed, by the way. This is not mutual consent where the woman's trying to be taken out of her misery and she asks for the man to kill her. And even then, that's not good either. But If you love somebody, you're not going to kill them. You're not going to kill them. And remember, this movie was talking, you know, some people say it's about sacrifice, Infinity War, but in fact, it is sacrifice, but in a very sadistic kind of way. And what's strange about this, you know, what's interesting about this, which this movie has captured, and it must be noted, is that they talk about human sacrifice. What I mean by that is, in the sadistic way, that some people will sacrifice their families. They will sacrifice people they love to acquire more power or more a favorable position. Remember, Thanos killed Gamora to acquire a thing. He killed her, murdered her. That's what he did. He murdered her. And, you know, I remember one of our viewers, was saying, you know, he was kind of saying, is it possible that, for instance, Zack Snyder may have murdered Autumn or given her as a sacrifice to acquire something else? I mean, it's warped, but nonetheless, we know that this happens all the time. And fame and these things. So that Thanos, for the first time on the screen, we actually see someone sacrifice another person to acquire gain. And obviously it's not a sacrifice of love. You know, the sacrifice of love is different to where a sacrifice of love means you are put in the position where you have to sacrifice something. In this case, Thanos doesn't really have to sacrifice anything personally of himself. He's sacrificing someone who he has affections for. And there's a difference, like I try to explain to people, someone having affections for something and someone who is doing things out of love and therefore sacrificing. I'll give you an example. So if you're in a relationship with someone, or someone is in a relationship, like the guy will give all these claims. He said, I'll give the world to you. He has feelings. He feels for the girl. He's attracted to her, and he has strong feelings for her. And that's not love. That's, you've got affections. You have a connection. You have feelings for somebody. That's not love. Love is deeper than that. And I try to explain to people it's beyond feelings. A lot of people say love is just a feeling. No, love is not just a feeling. When you don't sometimes feel happy with a person, love is a connection. It will make you still sacrifice things. You look at parents and their children. A mother will sacrifice her enjoyment. She will sacrifice things that are for her to share with her kids. She will sacrifice her time. That is no longer for herself, it's for her children. A father, the same thing. Some of these people work very long, hard hours, sacrificing for their children. And you have to understand that that is sacrifice, and that's out of love. So why I said this is because Thanos is a villain. And what happened in this movie is we start to empathize with Thanos, and that's not a bad thing. But in empathizing with a villain, you have to understand where that villain is coming from. Yes, but at the end of the day, you look at their actions. Look at the villain's actions, and that'll tell you that this is a villain. This is not somebody who will be good and will turn around. And then Thanos, throughout Infinity War, has been speaking the doctrine of death. And no matter how much he speaks about life, you watch his actions. And what is he doing all the time when his actions? He's killing people. He hasn't, throughout the movie, all Thanos is doing is killing. So you have to watch his actions. Yes, he make an argument that he's going to bring life to the universe and bring balance to it. But his way of bringing balance is to bring death. And that's not the only way to bring balance. Another thing that you should look at when you look at these people with their philosophies is when they're very absolute about their philosophies, that there's only one way to do something. When there's only one way to do something, not even in Christianity, there's the saying that there's only one way, absolutely one, literally one way to do something. It's not, in Christianity, we have people with different gifts and stuff. Yes, there's one way to God, but one way to do things on this earth? No, there are many different ways to do it. It's very important to realize. So why did I speak about this? And I'm going to go wider on this topic, is because a lot of people, by empathizing with Thanos, they actually believed that Thanos loved Gamora. You don't love, if you love somebody, you're not going to sacrifice them. And the Soul Stone is also very ridiculous in that the Soul Stone itself is saying you have to sacrifice somebody you love. You won't do that. You won't kill somebody you love. No one does that. And so that is where we learn very quickly that he doesn't love Gamora. His actions betray him. Now, if you look at another character, there are a couple of them. A lot of people talk about General Zod. He always had a point, and General Zod, and people empathize with General Zod. When Superman snapped his neck, people felt for it and was like, he didn't need to kill General Zod like that. General Zod is a villain. General Zod is not a good person. We get to see his point of view, but he's not good. How do we know that? He's from Krypton, right? But he kills Jor-El. He kills Jor-El, his best friend. Kills him, dead. Jor-El had a different philosophy. Jor-El was reasoning, at least the AI of Jor-El was reasoning with Zod. Yes, Zod has good, he has good points. But at the end of the day, he did not agree with what Jor-El was saying about coexistence instead of eradicating a whole entire species of people to repopulate the world. So while Zod has points, Zod is not a guy that cares about anyone else except for his people. And that, my friends, is exactly what we don't want in the world. He's not a good person because of that. And when Zod's people are eradicated, or he thinks they're all gone, even though Kal-El is there, what does General Zod do? He decides to exact revenge, showing his dark side, showing he's an evil person. He's not a good person. And he tries to kill every single human that Kal-El is associated with. He decides to exact revenge. Not justifiable. Again, a lot of people empathize with General Zod. But in fact, General Zod needed to be stopped. And like Kal-El and like Jor-El, both Kryptonians, one was on Krypton when General Zod started to kill out the council, and the next one was on Earth. And General Zod's been consistent. He is a monster. And what he did was not honorable because Jor-El, a Kryptonian, disagrees with him. And so you have to understand that you have to look past the emotional connection you have with the characters because you're empathizing with them and see that they're not good people. The other character that a lot of people empathized with was Deadshot and Suicide Squad. Very charismatic character. You know, you immediately see the honorable parts of him, but he's an assassin. And while assassins have dimension to them, and we learn that they have dimension to them, Deadshot did not do what he did because he felt obligated to do it out of the generosity of his heart. No, he wanted to prove a point that he wasn't just shit. And he wanted to win favor with his daughter. In fact, there's a difference between actually loving someone and being in love with the notion of loving someone. You know, he's in love with the notion of loving someone. And Deadshot was in love with the notion that he could be a good father to his daughter. He knew he would never be a good father. Harley Quinn was in love with the notion, the fantasy, that she and Joker could have a good, normal relationship as a couple. She knew that was never going to happen. Similarly, with Thanos, he was in love with the notion that Gamora and him, that Gamora would carry on his legacy and he would live on through her. And he had strong emotional ties to her because of that. But he didn't love Gamora. Deadshot doesn't love his daughter. And a lot of people say, well, he loves his daughter. No, he doesn't. He's in love with the idea of being a good father to his daughter. But he's never there for her. Think about it. Actions speak louder than words. And so when you put that into perspective, now it makes sense that he and she would be talking about sniping people at the end of the movie, showing that Deadshot is not repentant about being an assassin. He's not changed at the end of the movie. We just see another side of him that we can relate to, and it makes him more human. But he's not a good person. And these are the things that people don't understand. And you know, when I talk to people about these characters, we get to see an interesting side of them. And we get to see, but they're bad people. And they keep on telling you they're bad people in Suicide Squad. Harley Quinn obviously is a bad person. But these people, they think that these people can be redeemed. I remember critics saying there were no redemption of these characters. And I'm like, well, it's not about redemption. These are bad people. Like, you don't understand. If you see Deadshot in another movie, you're going to see why he's a bad person, okay? It's not like he's going to be reformed. It's better he's with the Suicide Squad doing what he does, sniping people to death. That's what he does, okay? And you have to understand that. It's not like he's going to change anytime soon. You may feel hopeful because you've seen a side of him, but it doesn't mean that he's a good person. And I think that's a lot of the things that a lot of these people don't get. And why I say this is because what's nice about this is when I was having the discussion with the guy, is I realized these are movies that we need to discuss. I think that little point right there where people talk about Thanos loving Gamora, I think it's worth the while to talk with your kids about that. Sit down and have a chat, a discussion on those things. Because I just believe it's worth it. That alone, to me, makes Thanos a little bit more interesting to me, because that's a discussion worth talking about. A lot of people will say, well, the Infinity Stone said he loved her. But the stone is not something that's good. You have to give a life to get that stone. Therefore, it's not good. Therefore, its interpretation of love will be skewed. If you think about it now. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Let's see what you guys have to say in the comment section. Let me go to the comment section here and see what you guys are talking about. And interesante. I'm not seeing much here at the present moment. Remember, you can chat in the chat section. Some of you guys take a little while to warm up and actually talk in my chat section. That's cool. So I wanted to talk about that. There are some other villains, but they are more straightforward, like Ares. And again, all of these villains, they do present some interesting points. But again, Ares is clearly a villain. He's trying to annihilate mankind. And we know why. All right, so he's much more straightforward. You can see he's a villain. You can see that Enchantress is a villain. But what is presented to you by these villains, whoever they may be, Red Skull and so on, is what you get villains, hella even. You get villains who are villainous, but you get to see and understand a bit about them. And some of them are just totalitarians, period. And that's the point behind these villains. But you have to understand they're villains. They're not good people, okay? Some of them are irredeemable, and some of them are, given certain circumstances, they would be, you know, somewhat redeemable. And so I wanted people to understand this, and I hope you guys share this video, because it's very important to understand. Love is not a thing which is just feelings and affection. You know, it's not just that. It's dictated by, it's a principle. It's dictated by action. And so if you claim to love somebody, then your actions would show that you do or you don't. Your actions will show it. And you know, I've heard so many different arguments about, you know, it can be cultural, you know, all these excuses. It could be cultural. This movie is not just cultural. This movie is global. It's a global movie that's going all over the world. So regardless of your culture, okay, regardless of your culture, there is usually a universal understanding on certain things. And you will realize that it's a universal understanding that Adolf Hitler was a tyrant. That's almost a universal understanding. Now, yes, of course, there's some people who don't agree with that, but, and here's the thing that I have to say. Clearly, the depiction of love that is being portrayed on the, you know, in Infinity War movie is not necessarily the right one. But then again, you have to understand, this is where I think the directors may clarify this in Infinity War, the second part, that the Infinity Stone itself, the stone, the Soul Stone that they talk about, remember the Soul Stone, you got to give a soul to get the Soul Stone. So how's that a good thing? How is that a good thing? If you have to give a soul to get the Soul Stone, that's not a good thing. That's like the devil taking souls. So therefore, it's not a good thing. The stone is not a good thing. And therefore, if it's evil, then it means similarly that it doesn't know what love is. Think about that. Think about what I'm saying. Now, of course, bad people can love. Bad people love. But the actions of bad people would show that they love. They would show that they care about something, even though it may not be perfect. At least in the loose sense of the word love and care, you'd see it. All right. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. It's argued that General Zod said he loved Krypton, but yet he was killing Krypton's leaders. And as Jor-El said, you turned the sword against your own people. I can't honor you. I can honor what you used to be, but not this monster you became. So Zod, from the beginning, is shown to be a totalitarian, and he's shown to be a monster or an evil person. Okay? And no matter how sincere his thoughts may be, he's not doing the right thing. And he knows this somehow in the back of the recesses of his mind. And his action is always death. If you think about General Zod again, most of his actions are death. When you see somebody killing people, and he's making all these other excuses, but he's killing people all the time, something's wrong with that. Adolf Hitler. You know what I'm saying? The ministry of death. So always pay attention to certain things. Don't pay attention to necessarily what the character is saying. Pay attention to what the character does. Okay? And I'll be able to clarify it, because you don't want to be going down the road of emulating certain things. Oh, he's got a point. You know, the villain's got a point. And now you're going down the road of that, because that's a scary road to go down. Okay. That's what's happening in the world today. We're having nationalism and people talking about the world is overpopulated. Okay. If it's overpopulated, folks, then I wouldn't be eating well. I wouldn't be living well. It's not overpopulated. Clearly. It's not overpopulated. And if it is, nature will sort that out. It's not overpopulated. Don't let anybody fool you. Anyways, I thought I would share that with you guys. If you guys don't have anything in the chat section, I'm going to end this video. Dave Eaton. Hey, Anson, very good points about villains. Yeah, it's very important for us to realize that villains can be, the way how the filmmakers make these villains, they want you to be convinced of their point of view, if possible. So that's why they try to sculpt it a certain way, but they know these are villains. Okay, so they may want you to empathize with a villain, but sometimes the line is crossed, and people actually think of the villain outside of what they are. For instance, with Deathstroke, when Deathstroke decided his fantasy was to kill Batman, all of a sudden everybody was up in arms, like, "Oh, what's going on with Deathstroke?" Well, he's a villain, you know. So you have to pay attention to the fact that you're dealing with a villain. If you're dealing with a villain, he didn't change. Deathstroke didn't change or anything. He was just motivated by the fact that he wanted his daughter to think of him highly. And that was basically it, his motivation. But because, of course, Colonel, what's his name? I forgot what his name is. Colonel whatever. The Colonel was saying he's nothing. He's spineless. He's a coward. So Deadshot wanted to show that he had all these other attributes. And these are just other dimensions of Deadshot. But that doesn't mean that Deadshot is not going to be reformed. And when he's free, he's going to just go out there and do good things in the community. That's not happening. He's going to go right back to being an assassin. That's what he does. If you release Harley Quinn, she's going back out there with the Joker, and she's going to wreak havoc, and she's going to kill people. Okay? If you release Killer Croc, he was just going to go back out there and eat people. You know? And it's just what it is. All right? And so I think a lot of people don't understand that. The only guy that I think would have changed would have been Diablo. Diablo, he really wanted to change from what he was. You could tell that. And his arc shows that he does go full-blown Diablo, but at the end of the day, Diablo wanted to reform himself. But most villains don't want to reform. They're locked in their ways. And so I just wanted to share that. I thought it made Infinity War that much more interesting to me because the other guy, he was trying to defend the point that Thanos had love for Gamora, which he didn't. And this sounds terrible. It sounds like, oh man, he didn't have love for Gamora. Well, he did have affections for her, though. He was totally invested in her. She was his favorite. And again, the way how Thanos runs his household is screwed up. But he uses a lot of people fueled by rage and hate and that kind of thing and backbiting. That's what basically goes on in there. It's kind of like demonic. But at the end of the day, yes, he did favor Gamora. Yes, she was his favorite. But that does not mean that he loved her. And love is a totally different word, man. It's not a word to be taken lightly. Now, in the common sense of the word, where people talk about romance or they talk about strong feelings for someone that drives you to want to, do the best for them, how you ever know to do it, or sculpt them in your image. In that common way that people talk, you could say that he, loved in inverted commas her, but you can see that everything he did to her, she hated. She despised everything he was doing to her. All right. And that's because he was trying to shape her into the machine that she would be. So he saw a vision of what she could be and that she could take over from him. And so, of course, he was trying to get her in that direction. But to say he had compassion, I hear people saying he had compassion and he had love. He didn't have compassion. He didn't have love. He's talking about being merciful by killing people. You're not merciful by killing anyone. There's nothing merciful about killing people. You understand? Kevorkian has been tried for mercy killing. And these are people who wanted to die. And Kevorkian would come, he called Mr. Death. And they would consider him merciful because people wanted to end their pain or whatever. And he wasn't even considered merciful. And I still think that's not a good thing. I don't think mercy killing is a good thing anyway. People being in big pain is not a good thing either. And I can understand them wanting to end their lives. But there's I believe there's much more other options than ending your life, even when you're in great pain. And so, and if you believe in God, you're not going to try and kill yourself. Even though you will feel every bone in your body to die, there are other ways to maybe go about the situation where you don't have to go through that. I know of a friend of mine right down the street from me, and she'd been in great pain for many, many years. And she trusted in the Lord, and she makes it through that. You know what I'm saying? I've been in some pain. I remember once wanting to die. That was a long time ago. I wanted to commit suicide, actually, but God didn't allow me to. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying that mercy killing is particularly, it's a very controversial topic, but I wouldn't try to kill anybody at any time, you know. And for someone to premeditatedly, murderously, without the consent of the other person, kill them, I don't think that's cool at all. At all. And then you cannot love somebody and then kill them premeditatedly against their will. They don't want to die, but you're killing them. There's no love there. Let's be real. So that's what I got to say on that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's cool to see you talk there, Dave Ethan. I hope you had a great day. Hope you have a good weekend, and I hope you wish your mom or your wife happy Mother's Day, man, because you know mothers have done so much. So this is going to be Mother's Day weekend. I hope you guys spend some time appreciating your parents, your mothers out there. Those mothers generally go beyond the call of duty for their children. You want to see some love, look at how mothers treat their children. You know what I'm saying? That's some real love right there. Anyway, that's my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. You guys have a great one. I'm out. Peace.